October 17, 2024, 6:23 a.m. Pacific Time. The Pacific Northwest Seismic Network registered something seismologists had been anticipating but hoping to delay, a volcanic tremor beneath Mount St. Helens lasting 43 minutes. Unlike the sharp jolts of tectonic earthquakes, this was a continuous oscillation, the unmistakable signature of magma or pressurized fluids moving through rock. The source 3 kilometers directly beneath the lava dome that's been slowly growing inside the crater since 2004. After 16 years of relative quiet, the mountain was stirring again. This is the frustrating reality of volcano forecasting. Data describes what happened, not what will happen next. The stalled intrusion might resume ascent tomorrow or crystallize over months without erupting. Historical precedent offers some guidance. Mount St. Helens' 2004 eruption was preceded by similar patterns, with magma stalling multiple times before finally reaching the surface. But each intrusion is unique. Variables like magma temperature, gas content, conduit geometry, and stress fields interact in complex ways. Scientists could say eruption is possible within days to months, but couldn't specify when or whether. One advantage over previous eruptions, machine learning algorithms trained on global volcanic data. USGS scientists fed Mount St. Helens November 2024 data into AI models that analyze patterns from hundreds of unrest episodes worldwide. The algorithm identified the current signature as 67% similar to episodes that led to effusive eruptions, like 2004-2008, and 23% similar to episodes that produced explosive activity. The remaining 10% matched intrusions that subsided without eruption. These aren't predictions, they're statistical pattern matching, but they inform decision-making about alert levels and public warnings. The 1980 eruption began with 2 months of precursory activity, earthquakes starting March 20th, a small phreatic steam-driven explosion on March 27th, and bulging of the north flank at rates up to 1.5 meters per day by early May. Scientists recognized an eruption was coming, but couldn't predict the lateral blast mechanism. On May 18th at 8:32 a.m., a magnitude 5.1 earthquake triggered the north flank landslide, which depressurized the cryptodome, causing the catastrophic sideways explosion. The lesson: precursors provide warning, but don't always reveal the mechanism. Mount St. Helens taught scientists to expect the unexpected. The 2004-2008 eruption offered a contrasting lesson: slow, steady, manageable. After a week of intense seismicity in late September 2004, magma began extruding on October 11th. The dome grew for 3 years, occasionally producing small explosions and pyroclastic flows, but remaining confined to the crater. Scientists maintained close monitoring, occasionally closing observatory access during high activity periods, but no evacuations were required. The eruption was textbook, effusive, predictable, observable, and relatively safe. November 2024's data more closely resembled 2004 than 1980, suggesting a similar dome-building outcome, but resemblance isn't a guarantee. Mount St. Helens isn't alone in current unrest. Worldwide, roughly 40 to 50 volcanoes are in some state of elevated activity at any given time. Most never erupt. Calderas like Campi Flegrei, Italy, and Long Valley, California, show chronic unrest for decades without eruption. Stratovolcanoes like Popocatépetl, Mexico, maintain low-level eruptive activity for years. Mount St. Helens' November 2024 unrest fits within normal volcanic behavior globally, noteworthy, worth monitoring closely, but not apocalyptic. The challenge is that usually doesn't erupt isn't the same as won't erupt, and the consequences of guessing wrong are measured in lives. On November 18, 2024, the Cascades Volcano Observatory faced a decision: maintain advisory status or escalate to watch, which indicates eruption is possible with little warning or is underway with minor activity. The data showed continued unrest but no clear escalation toward imminent eruption. Elevating to watch would increase public alarm, potentially trigger unnecessary evacuations, and strain emergency resources. Maintaining advisory risked being caught off guard if activity suddenly accelerated. The scientists chose to hold at advisory but increase monitoring intensity and public communication frequency. This decision illustrates volcano monitoring's central tension. Scientists must balance honest uncertainty with the public need for actionable guidance. Saying "we don't know if or when it will erupt" is truthful but unsatisfying. Communities need risk assessments to make decisions whether to evacuate, cancel events, close roads, or activate emergency protocols. The Cascades Volcano Observatory issued daily updates throughout November, explaining current activity, placing it in historical context, and providing probability ranges for different outcomes. Transparency became the strategy when certainty was impossible. Local governments didn't wait for watch status to prepare. Schools conducted volcano drills, emergency services pre-positioned equipment, hospitals reviewed mass casualty protocols. The Red Cross opened preparedness centers offering free emergency kits. Cowlitz County distributed Lahar evacuation route maps to every residence in identified zones. The message, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Some residents found the preparations reassuring evidence of institutional competence. Others found them alarming. If authorities are preparing this seriously, how bad could it get? Both reactions were valid. For the Cowlitz Indian tribe, whose ancestral lands include Mount St. Helens, known in Cowlitz as Lawat-Latla, the mountain's stirring is understood through generations of oral tradition. Stories passed down describe eruptions before written records existed, teaching that the mountain has always been alive, occasionally expressing its power. Tribal elder Tana Engdahl explains, "Our people lived with this mountain for thousands of years. We knew it erupted. We knew to respect it, to watch for signs, to move when necessary. The mountain is a relative, not an enemy. When it speaks, we listen." Archaeological evidence supports these traditions. Tephra layers in the Columbia River Basin show Mount St. Helens erupted repeatedly over the past 4,000 years, at least 5 major events before 1980. Indigenous communities adapted, rebuilding after eruptions, incorporating volcanic events into their cultural understanding. This long-term perspective offers wisdom modern society struggles to achieve. Acceptance that living with volcanoes means experiencing eruptions, planning for recovery, and maintaining cultural continuity through disaster. The mountain will erupt again. The question is whether communities can be as resilient as the people who lived here first. Dr. Seth Moran, scientist in charge at Cascade's Volcano Observatory, reflected on the November unrest. "We have the best monitoring network in the world here. Decades of research, lessons from 1980 and 2004, but every time the mountain shows unrest, I'm reminded how much we still don't know. Volcanoes are complex systems with thousands of interacting variables. We've gotten better at recognizing patterns, but pattern recognition isn't the same as prediction. The honest answer to when will it erupt is often we don't know. That's humbling, but it's the truth." As November turned to December 2024, Mount St. Helens remained at advisory status. Seismicity continued at reduced but elevated levels, 20 to 30 earthquakes daily, compared to the pre-October baseline of 5 to 10. Deformation had essentially stopped, with GPS showing less than half a centimeter of additional movement over 2 weeks. Gas emissions gradually declined toward normal. The acute phase of unrest appeared to be stabilizing, though stabilizing didn't mean over. The magma that intruded in October-November remained at shallow depth, still hot, still capable of resuming ascent with minimal warning. Scientists emphasize the volcano could remain in this condition indefinitely, months, years, potentially decades, with elevated background activity that never progresses to eruption. Or it could escalate tomorrow. This ambiguity defines life in volcano country. Constant low-grade awareness of potential danger, punctuated by episodes of heightened concern, occasionally culminating in actual eruption. Most unrest episodes don't end in eruptions, but some do. And determining which category a given episode belongs to is often only possible in retrospect. The tourism industry faced complex calculations. Some operators reported December bookings were 20% higher than previous year's volcano interest driving visits. Others saw cancellations from risk-averse travelers. The net effect roughly neutral economically, but with winners and losers. Helicopter tour companies thrived. Hotels near the blast zone are filled with volcano enthusiasts. But adventure tourism operators farther from the mountain faced declines as regional perception shifted toward dangerous. The invisible hand of the market pricing volcanic risk in real time with imperfect information and competing narratives.
Mount St. Helens will erupt again. This isn't speculation, it's geological certainty. The volcano has erupted dozens of times over the past 4,000 years, with major events roughly every 100 to 300 years, and smaller eruptions more frequently. The 1980 eruption reset the clock in some ways, but didn't change the fundamental fact. This is an active volcano in an active volcanic arc driven by ongoing subduction. Whether the November 2024 unrest leads to a near-term eruption or subsides for decades, the long-term trajectory is clear. Eruption within the next century, highly probable. Eruption within the next decade, moderate probability. Eruption within the next year, low but non-negligible probability.
Mount St. Helens showed signs of magmatic reawakening in October-November 2024. Every monitoring parameter, seismicity, deformation, gas emissions, and thermal changes indicated magma movement at shallow depth. The unrest resembled precursors to the 2004-2008 dome-building eruption more than the catastrophic 1980 event, suggesting that if an eruption occurs, it will likely be effusive and manageable. But volcanic systems are not perfectly predictable. The mountain could surprise us. It has before. For those who live in the volcano's shadow, life continues with adaptive awareness. Emergency kits are packed, evacuation routes are known, alert systems are trusted, but daily life precedes jobs, schools, and routines. This is the psychological adaptation required to live with geological hazards, acknowledging risk without being paralyzed by it, preparing without panicking, respecting the mountain's power while not fleeing from it. 44 years after 1980, the region has learned to live with Mount St. Helens, not by ignoring the danger, but by integrating it into their identity. They are volcano people. The mountain defines them. The mountain that devastated a region in 1980 and quietly built a dome from 2004-2008 showed signs of life again in 2024. Magma moved, rock fractured, the earth breathed. Whether this breath becomes an eruption, and if so, when and how large, remains unknown. Scientists watch, communities prepare, and the volcano, indifferent to human concern, operates on its own timescale. We can observe, measure, and interpret. We cannot control. This is the relationship we have with the forces that built the ground we stand on. Respect, vigilance, and acceptance. Mount St. Helens needs no introduction. On May 18, 1980, the volcano produced the deadliest and most economically destructive eruption in U.S. history. A lateral blast that obliterated 600 square kilometers of forest, killed 57 people, and sent ash across 11 states. The mountain's entire north flank collapsed in a massive debris avalanche, reducing its elevation by 400 meters. That catastrophic event transformed Mount St. Helens from a picture-perfect stratovolcano into America's most intensely monitored volcanic system. And now, that monitoring network was detecting patterns disturbingly similar to those that preceded the 2004-2008 dome-building eruption. Between October 2004 and January 2008, Mount St. Helens extruded a new lava dome inside its crater. A massive pile of viscous dacite lava that grew to over 100 million cubic meters, roughly the volume of 40,000 Olympic swimming pools. The eruption was effusive, not explosive. Magma oozed out rather than blasting, building the dome spine by spine, day by day, for over 3 years. It finally stopped in 2008, leaving a solidified monument to the volcano's restless nature. Since then, sporadic small earthquakes, constant steam venting, but no sustained unrest. Until October 2024. Beneath Mount St. Helens sits a magma plumbing system scientists have mapped in unprecedented detail through decades of monitoring. Seismic tomography reveals a vertical conduit extending from approximately 8 kilometers depth to the crater floor. This pathway, carved during previous eruptions, remains partially filled with crystallized magma and is surrounded by fractured rock. When fresh magma rises from the deeper reservoir, which connects to the Cascade subduction zone where the Juan de Fuca plate descends beneath North America, it follows this established route of least resistance. The magma at Mount St. Helens is dacitic 63-68% silica, making it highly viscous, thick like peanut butter rather than fluid like Hawaiian basalt. This viscosity creates the mountain's characteristic behavior. When magma rises slowly and loses gas gradually, you get dome-building eruptions like 2004. When magma rises rapidly and gas can't escape, pressure builds until rock fails explosively, like in 19. The key variable is ascent rate. Fast equals explosive, slow equals effusive. October 2024's tremor suggested magma was moving. The critical question, how fast? Mount St. Helens is surveilled by one of Earth's most sophisticated volcano monitoring networks. 23 seismometers detect ground shaking. 15 continuous GPS stations measure deformation to millimeter precision. Tilt meters track slope changes. Gas sensors sample sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide emissions. Thermal cameras monitor temperature changes. Webcams provide real-time visual observation, and satellite radar maps show deformation across the entire edifice every 6 days. When the October tremor occurred, this network captured it from every angle: seismic, geodetic, thermal, and visual. The October 17th tremor wasn't isolated. Between October 17th and November 10th, the Cascades Volcano Observatory documented 428 volcanic earthquakes beneath the summit. Small events, most below magnitude 2.0, but clustered in a tight volume between 2 and 5 kilometers depth. The pattern indicated progressive rock fracturing as something pushed upward from below. Daily earthquake counts rose from 15 in late October to over 40 by early November. The mountain wasn't just breathing, it was hyperventilating. On November 3rd, a magnitude 3.7 earthquake struck directly beneath the dome, the largest volcanic earthquake at Mount St. Helens since the 2004-2008 eruption. Residents in the town of Cougar, 15 kilometers south, felt strong shaking. Climbers on the crater rim reported hearing thunder-like sounds from within the mountain. Social media erupted with speculation and concern. By November 5th, the Cascades Volcano Observatory elevated Mount St. Helens' alert level from normal to advisory, aviation color code from green to yellow. the volcano officially transitioned from monitoring baseline to active unrest. GPS networks detected what seismicity implied the mountain was inflating. Between October 17th and November 10th, stations on the crater rim moved outward and upward by 4.2 centimeters, small in absolute terms but significant when it occurs over 3 weeks at a previously stable volcano. Tilt meters measured the dome tilting slightly northward, suggesting a pressure source beneath the southern crater floor. Satellite INSAR confirmed the pattern, concentric uplift centered on the dome, spreading radially outward. Something was pushing from below, and the mountain was responding. Gas monitoring detected increasing sulfur dioxide emissions rising from baseline 50 tons per day to 180 tons per day by mid-November. So too comes from magma degassing, indicating either increased magma volume at shallow depth or enhanced permeability, allowing deeper gases to reach the surface. Thermal cameras measured temperature increases at fumaroles on the dome, some vents rising from 85 darkso to 96 darkso. The crater floor showed new steam plumes that hadn't been present in October. Every monitoring parameter pointed to the same conclusion: magma was ascending toward the surface. Based on Mount St. Helens' historical behavior and current data, scientists outlined 3 scenarios. Best case, the magma intrusion stalls at shallow depth, the unrest gradually subsides over weeks to months, and no eruption occurs, similar to many intrusion episodes at other volcanoes that stabilize without reaching the surface. Likely case, continued dome growth eruption, similar to 2004-2008, with magma slowly extruding, building new dome material, producing occasional explosions from gas buildup, but remaining largely effusive and manageable. Worst case, explosive eruption driven by rapid magma ascent or dome collapse, producing pyroclastic flows, ash columns reaching stratospheric heights, and lahars threatening downstream valleys. The 1980 eruption looms over every assessment. That catastrophe resulted from a massive landslide triggered by an earthquake and magma intrusion, which suddenly depressurized the cryptodome, magma body inside the mountain, causing the lateral blast. Could it happen again? The north flank no longer exists. It's a wide-open crater, but instability could develop elsewhere. The 2004-2008 dome, while solidified, sits precariously. If new magma destabilizes it, a dome collapse could generate pyroclastic flows traveling at 80 kilometers per hour down the volcano's flanks. This scenario, while less catastrophic than 1980, would still threaten areas within 15 kilometers. Mount St. Helens' summit glaciers, crater glacier inside the crater, plus remnant ice on flanks, contain enough frozen water to generate significant lahars if melted rapidly by eruption. These volcanic mud flows can travel 50 kilometers down river valleys at speeds exceeding 60 kilometers per hour, devastating everything in their path. The Toutle River, which drains the volcano's north side, flows through communities including Castle Rock and into the Cowlitz River near Kelso Longview, population 50,000 combined. Lahar warning systems exist, but warning time could be as little as 30 minutes from eruption to impact. Speed is survival. For residents of Southwest Washington, Mount St. Helens isn't an abstract threat. It's a mountain that killed neighbors, destroyed livelihoods, and transformed their region within minutes on a Sunday morning 44 years ago. In the town of Toutle, population 800, nearly everyone knows someone who was there in 1980. Reed Swick, who was 12 years old when the mountain exploded, recalls watching the ash cloud from his family's farm. It looked like the end of the world. We didn't know if it would stop or keep going until it buried us. Now, as seismicity increases in 2024, those memories resurface. But the relationship with the volcano is complex. Mount St. Helens also drives tourism. The Johnston Ridge Observatory, built to overlook the blast zone, attracts over 300,000 visitors annually. Helicopter tours, climbing permits, interpretive centers, and scientific tourism generate over $100 million for the regional economy. When the November alert level elevation occurred, some businesses saw bookings increase. People wanted to see the volcano while it was active. Others faced cancellations from nervous tourists. The mountain gives and takes, sometimes simultaneously. Cowlitz County Emergency Management updated evacuation plans throughout November. The challenge: Mount St. Helens provides better warning now than in 1980 when monitoring was minimal, but the population at risk has grown. Over 75,000 people live in potential lahar zones. Evacuation routes are limited. Interstate 5, the main north-south corridor, crosses the Toutle River in potential impact areas. A major eruption during peak traffic could trap thousands. Emergency managers faced an uncomfortable truth: preparation has limits. If the mountain decides to erupt explosively with minimal warning, casualties are likely. The best they can do is maximize survivability through public education, warning systems, and clear evacuation protocols. By mid-November 2024, scientists compiled a detailed picture from monitoring data. Seismicity remained elevated, 30 to 50 earthquakes daily, but hadn't continued accelerating exponentially. Deformation had slowed from 4.2 centimeters in 3 weeks to less than 1 centimeter in the subsequent 2 weeks. Gas emissions plateaued around 200 tons SO2 per day. The pattern suggested magma had ascended to shallow depths, likely 1 to 3 kilometers, but was encountering resistance, perhaps cooling, crystallizing, or blocked by older solidified magma in the conduit.